No, 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 no. Oh, he tried it.
So here's an opinion that I'm not sure will be popular or not, is that Resident Evil 4 Remake should not be a thing. So before we continue about talking about, why it's a bad idea, I think we should jump immediately into the beginning of everything. So Resident Evil 4 comes right after its predecessors Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, which should be pretty obvious. Resident Evil 4's original copy came out for the GameCube in 2005, following the character Leon S. Kennedy, the same rookie cop we saw in Resident Evil 2, except he's been training for, I'm gonna guess, about non-stop for about 6 years, supported by the fact that he's able to pull off some ridiculous shit none of the other survivors of Raccoon City at the time could have ever done. At this point, Leon could take out several Mr. X's, base Nemesis would be much less of a threat. I'm not sure if he could take out Nemesis directly though, because he did try to kick the big cheese, so I don't freaking know. Anyways, the point is that Resident Evil 4 for its time went completely against the old survivor horror experience. If you've seen any videos on Resident Evil 4, they will always point out that Resident Evil 4 was a pioneer for the whole action survival genre. Like the game suggests, it focuses a lot more on an action-based premise with more keys to open doors than full-on puzzles, which you needed to solve and fit pieces together from locations, and did admittedly feel a little bit more linear, but not simple enough to render puzzles obsolete. At least not by a long shot. This formula is pretty much seen in every Resident Evil game ever since, until Resident Evil 7, where they kind of went back to the original formula, but I don't know why they went for the first person view model. Now here's the question, right? So what's the difference between Resident Evil 4 compared to, I don't know, Resident Evil 5, the various DLCs, Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2, and Resident Evil 6? What's the difference? That Resident Evil 4 was universally praised for its shift in dynamics, amazing control, a great narrative, a set of characters that I personally believe to be the best of the series, and a good sense of balance of horror, suspense, action, and mystery. And boy, did they work well to create some of the best moments in not just the RE franchise, but gaming as a whole. Now other games were praised as well. RE5 received a lot of praise, but that didn't come without a bunch of criticism that the game felt too similar to Resident Evil 4. RE Revelations is like just as memorable as the movie, so that's kind of saying something. And I don't think anyone likes Resident Evil 6. The main problem for the other series is that they're really missing out on the sinister atmosphere and build up of Resident Evil 4. RE4 was still action based, but it fit in the RE narrative. It felt like it belonged in that universe in the sense that it was scary and it was disturbing. Much like other universally praised games like Halo Combat Evolved would be a complete clusterfuck if things were introduced right from the get-go, as with any game. But these two games knew exactly what to introduce and when to introduce them, making it a lot less messy, keeping the game fresh, and ultimately keeping the sense of dread at a distance, not too close but not too far either. Giving you the tools to do the job, making sure that you can do the job, and making you enjoy that job. The change in camera dynamics is a very intuitive addition to the game. I mean, saying that Dead Space drew inspiration from Resident Evil 4's camera work, I mean, like, that's a pretty good indication in and of itself. Now for people who haven't played Resident Evil 4, you might think that RE2 and 3 are quite action based, because of the weapons they use, the enemies they encounter, the third person view bottles. No! At least compared to Resident Evil 4, it's not. I mean, come on, you can fucking suplex people so hard their heads fucking explode. Alright, so let's get into exactly why remaking Resident Evil 4 is not a good idea in practical terms, alright. One of the issues I'm sure is going to be brought up immediately is that Resident Evil 4 Classic already exists on some of the most popular video game consoles today, being released on the GameCube, Nintendo Wii, friggin' Xbox 360, One and X, PlayStation 2, 3, 4, and Pro, 3 times on the PC alone, although one was admittedly a pretty cool mod, and even on your mobile. Hell, it was even on Zebo. I mean, what the hell even is that? I felt like with Resident Evil 3, all they did was reimagine the story and the gaming mechanics, just like Resident Evil 2. But that's kinda the thing, you can't really do that in Resident Evil 4, because then it would just feel like you're upping the graphics. You're also taking a risk on changing key game mechanics, making a game that doesn't hold true to the original, and pissing off fans. Final Fantasy VII got a remake because the game was like on 2-bit, plus it was an RPG instead of hack and slash, so it made sense, it felt fresh, it felt like it made sense for it to have a remake. But Resident Evil 4 still looks stunning in today's standard. And that's because Resident Evil 4 had a natural olden and foggy sort of atmosphere, or like many people call it, a timeless art style. Although not in the beautiful textures or beautiful characters, Leon. It's in the sense that the game feels unique in the sense that no world outside would feel like RE4. A remake like RE4, like I said before, wouldn't make much sense. There's no point in remaking a remake. The game mechanics are very similar to Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. The graphics don't need upgrades like I said before, and the story doesn't need to be retold, it's perfect already. Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 had fixed camera angles and had similar systems and mechanics, and were a lot more closely connected. It would be weird to see a Resident Evil 2 remake and not expect a Resident Evil 3 remake, which happened. By retelling the story, amping the graphics, sound mechanics, they make the game into something that we wouldn't have ever expected to see, well, 2 decades ago. Then we have Resident Evil 4, a revolution in the gaming industry. Just because they slap a gigantic 4 next to a previously established series doesn't mean it has to connect with the other 3. If you had removed all the characters from Resident Evil 4 and had us control an anonymous person with a similar story but cut out everything to do with Resident Evil like as a whole, nobody on earth would tell you that Resident Evil 4 had any connections from the past 3 games. It's just ridiculous how revolutionary the game was in the time, and it was honestly more of a risk than anything to make a game just how different it was. But the risk ultimately paid off. I could understand them remaking 3 because Resident Evil 2 had been remade. I could understand them remaking Resident Evil 2 because Resident Evil 1 had a remaster, although not quite the same. But having a Resident Evil 4 remake just doesn't sound right in my opinion. It's not like the game needs a remaster. Nothing in Resident Evil 4 needs remaster. And I can't express that enough, like it's pointless. And the fact of the matter is, it's been remastered on pretty much any console under the sun. The story is great. The mechanics and gameplay are fucking fantastic. The stories, the characters, the soundtracks, weapons, everything is just fantastic. But if it's anything like Resident Evil 2 Remake, then it just shouldn't exist. Not because Resident Evil 2 is bad. No, don't get that confused. It's that Resident Evil 2 and 4 are both great games, but they're incompatible. Although they share the same main characters, they just wouldn't work together. And that's just the problem. Alright, so my last point is, if they decide to remake Resident Evil 4, I hope it doesn't base off RE2's iteration of Leon. Because if it does, that in and of itself, it doesn't matter how flawless the game is, it's not gonna translate well for the OG fan. Leon S. Kennedy was 21 in Raccoon City, and in Resident Evil 4 he's 27. That gives him 6 years to transition from this to this. He's never going to become one of the most pinnacles of badass in 6 years. Alright, he's one of the most recognizable characters in all of gaming history. Without the confidence and attitude of Leon from Resident Evil 4, the game completely falls apart.
I've been expecting you, my brethren.
No thanks, bro.
And not only that, if they go for the same sort of approach to Resident Evil 2, the game falls apart anyway. Resident Evil 2 is good because it's a shooter action survival. It's a very good approach to that genre. But Resident Evil 4 cannot exist as a survival horror, because 1, it breaks the narrative, 2, it would just be the same as Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and it wouldn't make much sense for it to be a survival horror because you're saving Ashley, as opposed to escaping. Resident Evil 4 Remake is set to be released in 2022, 2 years from now. I think they have enough time to produce a good game, but at the same time, that's more than enough time to just stop the project. I don't trust Capcom handling one of the highest rated games of all time as a remake, and it just doesn't it doesn't feel right, alright? It's disappointing seeing that they're actually going. I don't know why Capcom is making a remaster. It doesn't feel right. I mean, who knows? Maybe it has potential, but at this point, it just feels like they're out of game ideas, you know? They're profiting off a game that they've already profited shit tons off before by essentially making the same game for pretty much anything, like from the PlayStation, Xbox, like I mentioned before. It's everywhere, alright? And it wouldn't make sense for it to have a remaster. It just doesn't need to happen. At least that's my opinion for now. I'm not sure if anything's gonna change, but I don't think it's gonna change. Resident Evil 4 just shouldn't happen. Alright, but that's just my opinion. Alright, that's it. See ya.